Thanks so much for joining us back here live at the Mackinac Policy Conference. We appreciate it right here at myvote.org. There's been a lot of conversation about the future of Michigan, where we're headed, and there's been a lot of focus on the city of Detroit. And joining me right now is Ken Cockrel Jr. He is the Executive Director of Detroit Future City. Ken, it's great to see you.
It's good to be seen.
All right,
Thank you.
we got to admit that we got caught talking because you and I have been sitting here for the last 10 minutes and going over some things, and we got caught talking because you're a former city councilman in the city of Detroit and now taking on this role at Detroit Future City. I'm going to back up and ask you, when you took this on and you went through the entire report, what were the thoughts that went through your head in taking on this endeavor?
You know, it's interesting because I've got kind of a unique perspective on it because I watched the process that led up to the ultimate production of the Detroit Strategic Framework and the opening of the Future City office in May of last year. I watched that process as an outsider because I was a member of city council at that time. But I can remember actually meeting with some of the team from the Detroit Future City office at that point, and I can remember saying, you know, this is great, I love it, it's visionary, bold stuff, but it's never going to work if you don't have the elected leadership of the city council, and particularly the mayor buying into it. The good thing is now that I'm doing this job, I feel that Mayor Duggan has bought into it, and that's a strong plus in the plus column for us.
So the framework of this is, and the scope of the project is so large, and we're looking out, what, 50 years? 50 years or so. So people will sit there and say, okay, where do you start? So what is the process, and I guess what are kind of the first points that you're working on?
Sure. So, and to back up and to explain for the benefit of some of your viewers that may not be familiar, Detroit Future City, which is the office that I run, is an outgrowth of something called the Detroit Strategic Framework, which is roughly a 350-page document published in January of last year, which contains a number of recommendations for essentially reinventing the city of Detroit along areas such as hiring more Detroiters, stabilizing neighborhoods, creating an innovative open space network, fulfilling regulatory reform, and those sorts of things. So we have about 50 pilot projects which comprise our implementation platform for the next year to year and a half, and those are going to be the projects that we're working on. To give you a specific example of one project, and it kind of illustrates the fact that the mayor and city government have bought into this, is we've been asked to actually work with the Planning and Development Department to help set the stage for an update of the city's master plan of policies, which is the guiding document for economic development decisions and land use decisions.
You know, and I think that's really important when you start talking about the coordination, because you can say we need to work on these neighborhoods, or we need to take care of blight here, or we need to have transportation in a certain area of the city, or we need to work on some kind of green infrastructure. But if you do not have that coordination of, and because there are so many different foundations that are now involved, and you have the city government, that people say, gosh, everyone's got to be on the same page. Does this finally do it? Does Detroit Future City finally put everyone on the same page of how we reinvent this city?
Well, I think, you know, there's always going to be certain detractors, and even the strategic framework does have its share of critics. But I think the one thing that's unique about the strategic framework is, I would argue that it's the most comprehensive document, set of recommendations and data sets in terms of outlining where a city is and where a city could go that's ever been done. I think it's unprecedented. I don't think it's been done anywhere else in this country, and maybe not any place else in the world. And the good thing about it is a lot of people are looking at it as a document that they can use to make their decisions. We're getting approached by developers, for example, and nonprofit organizations who are saying, look, we've got this economic development agenda, or we've got these projects that we want to do in the city. We want to make sure it aligns with the strategic framework. And it's something that's being taken seriously in the halls of city government.
If you're a citizen of Detroit, what can you expect to see in the next 6 to 8 months or the next year that would be something that would immediately be coming from Detroit Future City? What can you expect?
Well, we've got a full slate of pilot projects that we're working on. To give you one project, another project, for example, that we're currently involved in, which is already underway, is something called the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And we're actually participating in what's really a national initiative that's being funded by the US EPA. So the US EPA has committed $1 million to fund blue-green infrastructure improvements to reduce stormwater runoff and combine sewer overflows into the system so that we're not getting raw sewage that's being dumped into the Detroit River. Detroit Future City is partnering with the US EPA and with a couple of local organizations in Detroit, the Lower East Side Action Plan and Recovery Park, and we're going to be administering the $1 million local match dollars to match the US EPA money. And what we'll be doing is basically doing treatments to a number of vacant lots in the Lower East Side area to prevent and reduce stormwater runoff. And we'll also be doing one big diversion project, which will take that runoff, and instead of diverting it into a sewer system, where you could see a risk of this raw sewage being dumped into our rivers, that stormwater will actually be diverted and treated to an agriculture facility that will be used in Recovery Park's urban agriculture, urban farming activities.
That's great, and that's infrastructure that people sometimes don't think about when they think of blight or transportation, but that's something that's also so important with the reframing of the city. Before you go, you have a long political history, Ken, and served on the city council, and your name was floated as possible write-in candidate for Congress. Did you consider that? Are you running?
You know, it was interesting when the Free Press editorial hit. And you asked me before the interview, was I intrigued for about 5 minutes? And I'd be lying if I didn't say I was intrigued for about 5 minutes, but I am not running for that position. That's not to say I would close the door on maybe running for Congress at some point in the future. But having just taken over this role as executive director at Future City, I wouldn't want to bail on my new employer after less than 6 months of employment. And also, I've got a young 9-year-old son at home who I think needs his dad at home, not in Washington, D.C. most of the time. So both for professional and personal reasons, Congress is probably not the move for me at the moment. Wouldn't rule it out for the future, but not right now.
And you have a big job ahead of you right here.
Absolutely. And one thing I do want to mention, because you talked about blight, I should mention also that we have been working with the Blight Removal Task Force, which just issued its excellent report on Tuesday.
A staggering report, really.
And we have a blight boot camp, which is going to be coming up shortly in about a week or so. It's going to be Saturday, June 7th at Wayne County Community College's downtown campus, where we'll be showing citizens things that they can do at a grassroots neighborhood level to deal with the issue of blight in their community. We want to encourage everybody that has an interest in that to go to our website, www.detroitfuturecity.com, if you'd like to sign up or get more information.
All right, Ken Cockrel Jr., Detroit Future City, appreciate your time.
Thank you.